When was it? 4 days ago, beginning of the week, I said I remain optimistic about Elon owning Twitter. And I didn't really think I was going to say much more about that. But as often happens, Elon owns the nerd news cycle. And the thing that pushed me over the hump to want to write about it, I'm calling this writing out loud. Maybe that's the name of this bullshit. Yeah, 10% battery power. Was Gruber. He wrote a piece called Everything. And he attempts to take apart. This box out of my way. Got a new case for an old phone. He attempts to take apart Elon's tweet from the same day I said I was optimistic, although you won't believe me, I didn't read this before I wrote it. What's the timestamp? 6:39 local time. Yeah, I think I got it in before. Elon said, buying Twitter is an accelerant to creating X, the Everything app. And for those not familiar with the concept of the Everything app, it's basically trying to wrap messaging, media, and commerce into one bundle. The example that everybody points to, because it's the thing that's been most successful in this category, is WeChat in China, where it is the dominant thing. It is what people use to look at the menu at a restaurant and pay for their food. It's what people use to talk to their closest loved ones and to communicate with groups of hundreds of people they hardly know. It is sort of the everything app. You could cherry pick pieces of 4 or 5 different tools that you're familiar with in the Western world and put them all together. That's what Elon is arguing he wants to make. Abram Brown, back in June, mentioned a couple of things in talking about this, Elon Musk and the alluring dream for a super app. For Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter to work out as he'd like, Musk must find some way to supersize the company. Its business is long undersized compared to the platform's presence in culture and politics. I'm not sure that there's any disagreement to be found in that statement. And Brown goes on, U.S. adoption of mobile payments has significantly lagged behind China's. More than 80% of adults in China use mobile payments. In America, the figure is likely less than a third. And he links out to a source for that 30% number. There's a whole conversation to be had around, quite frankly, the prudence of moving everybody onto mobile payments. As Gruber points out in his piece, WeChat is in some ways certainly beneficial to the totalitarian government of China, and so there's a something of an incentive for WeChat to be successful in a way that one could argue we do not want in the United States, given our commonly held beliefs about individual freedom and privacy and so on. But anyway, there are a handful of pieces of Gruber's essay that I just found myself strongly disagreeing with. If you're spitballing wild ideas, it's easy to get enthralled by such an idea of an everything app. But give it any serious thought whatsoever and it starts falling apart. What you're talking about is putting an entire OS inside an app. No, that's not what anybody's talking about. No one is arguing for managing your photo library inside of Twitter. No one is arguing for having all of your communication with your employer and your colleagues right alongside your communication outside of work. And no one is arguing for Twitter to subsume all of eBay. Like, it's not an operating system. It's not the thing that every application has to run inside of. Is that the case with WeChat? Yeah, like WeChat is an app platform, but that's not by definition what I think Elon envisions Twitter becoming, or what I could see Twitter becoming. Gruber goes on, who looks at Twitter of all things and says, I'd like to see this expand in scope such that a lot more, if not all, of my digital life can be here. Twitter today is already more confusing and less cohesive than the iOS or Android systems themselves. Both iOS and Android are actually both really good at offering interfaces for, well, everything. What Twitter needs to do is less, certainly not more. What we need isn't an everything app. It's an everything device with small, focused apps for features. You want to do more? Download, or better yet, create a new app. And you've already got one in your pocket or in your hand as you read this very sentence on it right now. So again, building this whole argument on a sort of preposterous premise that the notion of evolving Twitter into something that looks more like WeChat than what Twitter looks like today is akin to creating an operating system, to building an environment where an average user would logically conclude that they don't need to install any other piece of software onto their personal computer, which is to say their smartphone in 2022, than Twitter. That's preposterous. It's just like, it's frustrating to see such a sort of obtuse argument from someone that I've agreed with on many, many things over the years. Sort of related, Scott Galloway wrote a piece on identification systems that I think is worth mentioning here. Bots and fake accounts are a cancer on these platforms, and they drive content creators away. The vast majority of Twitter users may not encounter the bot problem directly, since there is minimal engagement on most tweets. But having a reasonably large following, I can confirm the bot problem is severe. When I discuss crypto, or Elon and Tesla, or VC-backed firms' valuations, or say anything about Trump, an army of Joey Bag of Numbers accounts flood my mentions. Galloway goes on, social media's untrustworthiness is a business opportunity. The solution to confirming online identity is a profitable layer/middleman in waiting. Users could set up a single identity account with a trusted provider who'd then vouch for the uniqueness of that user with any social media company or other online business where they open an account. Sort of a Clear for platforms. Clear being a reference to the for-profit business that people use to ease the experience of going through airport security in the United States. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. The last reference that I wanted to call out was from an old chum of mine, friend, acquaintance. I don't know how we would describe our relationship. We've sat in bars together a handful of times. I more or less like Rick Webb, from his good morning, hello, how are you? I more or less like Twitter the way it is. They could do better about harassment, but at least they're trying. I reject the thesis that Twitter is run by incompetent people, and if only a smart person ran it, it would be so much better. Most of what is good about Twitter is also what's bad about Twitter, and you cannot tear them asunder. All right, so now all those pieces are out on the board. How are we doing? All right, a little less than 10 minutes. It'll be interesting to see how to chop this up. Like it or not, I think one of the lasting effects of the Trump presidency is that Twitter is the de facto identity system for a significant slab of the internet. And Ryan Broderick, who writes Garbage Day, he had a nice iceberg diagram of the internet. I'll drop that in here. And I mention it simply to say that there are massive chunks of human beings connecting on the internet which have nothing to do with Twitter. You can have an overwhelmingly rich experience on the internet by using Reddit exclusively and never touching Twitter. And yet, politicians don't create Reddit accounts and use them as a PR tool. Corporate executives don't use Facebook. And, popular celebrities link to their Instagram content from their Twitter account. Like, I believe that the evidence bears out that Twitter is the de facto identity platform for people that want to operate in the sort of solar system of social media tools, right? The internet's a very big place. You can exist in another solar system. Again, you can live and die inside of Wikipedia and never touch any of these things and still spend 8 hours a day playing on the internet. But the first thing I think is important is to grant that premise if you want to hear out the rest of my argument. Twitter is this sort of de facto identity platform. Having to step outside of that platform in order to transact is substandard. I mean, we can look to Instagram as a strong example here. While many people would tell you that it is a shadow of what made it great and what brought people there in the first place, the flow of seeing something you want to purchase while you're using Instagram to having purchased it, you never leave Instagram. And it's an incredibly effective, slippery funnel, to use the sales term. And so adding that capability to Twitter is, quite frankly, like, it falls under what I think the banner of all of my thoughts on this topic are, which is Twitter can grow without Elon. They don't need Elon to do this. That said, what Elon has stated he wants to do, which is grow it into something akin to an everything app and attack the spam/bot problem. Those are the things that it needs to do. Another thing that I think Twitter very much needs to do and is on its way to doing, which I would cite as evidence that they can get to a better place, a more successful place, a more indispensable place, with or without Elon's ownership of the company, is how do you provide for smaller groups of people to carry on conversations that are scoped in one way or another uh, on the platform? Today, by and large, you either have a public Twitter account where anything you post is available to anyone on the internet because every tweet is URL addressable and, you know, has long been, uh, let's say, a better citizen of the open web in that regard than plenty of other tools. My understanding from the last time I looked at it is um, even a public Facebook post is in some cases gated by having to log in with a Facebook account in order to read it. But I may be speaking out of school, I may be wrong on that particular point. You either have a public Twitter account or you have a private Twitter account. If you have a private Twitter account, then your follow graph is suddenly far more important because the only people who are going to be able to consume whatever it is you share are people who have made the explicit decision to follow you. That's the way it's been for a long, long time. However, within the last 24 months, maybe less, maybe it's like 18 months, uh, Twitter shipped two really compelling features: the circle and communities. And both of these are, let's be clear, standing on the shoulders of giants. The circle is something that I think Instagram implemented first, which is, yes, uh, you have all of your followers set, but there's probably a set of VIPs that you want to be able to address independent of everybody else. So Twitter now has the ability for you to author something and flip the switch that says, I only want this to go to this set of VIPs. And I think they cap it at less than 100 people or something like that. The second feature is communities. And any user can set up a community, give it a name, give it a purpose, give it some brand, some identity, and then either make it public or make it by invitation only. And this to me is taking something from Reddit, which is, I want to talk to everybody who wants to talk about learning to cook, learning to make sushi. My son likes to eat a lot of sushi, so I'm trying to learn to make sushi. If there's a community of people who are all invested in learning that same skill, I'd like to be able to scope my conversation to just those people. And that can be a public group that everybody can participate in, but I don't need to direct what I have to say on that topic to everyone who is following me for any reason, right? My identity is not singular, it's multifaceted. And so these two features, which again have already shipped, are the sort of moving forward that I think Twitter needs to do. Uh, in addition to being able to transact, move money between users, purchase things inside of the system, and being the baseline identity tool, there's not a whole lot else that I think you would need to grow Twitter into in order to call it an everything app and see a significant uptick in usage. Because again, what are you doing if you're doing that? You're giving people greater capability, right? I see an ad for a totally rad small flashlight that charges over USB-C. I can buy it, right? I can go through the entire transaction in 90 seconds. In Instagram, I can do that today. In Twitter, I can't. Building the ability to transact into Twitter enables that. And I can get to a place where if I'm a new user, if I've never used the platform, but somebody tells me, hey, there's this community that I'm a part of, and it's a couple hundred people, and I don't know all of them, but they're all really into the same kind of woodworking that I know you're into, that's a reason for you to sign up for Twitter. And you don't have to follow the president or your local representative or Elon Musk. You don't have to interact with any of that part of Twitter, and you'll have a significant value there. And so, to me, I think there's a tremendous amount of hot air that's been spent over time now on Elon owning the thing because people have their reasons for not liking Elon. But to me, the most important thing, the thing that I'll put a couple pins in here for the next time this is the topic of the week, number one, the fundamental value in this transaction going through is that Twitter removes itself from the public market, and therefore the every 90-day shot clock of, are you adding value for shareholders? By becoming a private company, they don't have to deal with that shit, and they can be a product shop again in a way that they should be able to have been, but have struggled, to be clear. And number two, by going private, they get to make large-scale strategic choices that the market may not appreciate. And chief among those, if you go and look at Elon's texts that have been made public, the one that stands out is Jack Dorsey very clearly, in no uncertain terms, telling Elon, we have to build an open protocol that Twitter then consumes, so that it's not just Twitter that is in control of the ability for people to interact. Again, those are the pins. I'm over time, but this is why I'm bullish on it. Not because it's Elon, because Twitter needs to go private so they can move faster. That's all I have to say.